Christianity in the Middle Ages, attitudes toward animals changed. There was good news in that animals were no longer viewed as sacrificial victims. The thinking was that since Jesus Christ made the ultimate sacrifice, no animal sacrifices were necessary. The bad news was that the status of animals fell from being gods, half-gods, admired brothers or equals, if you will, in nature, to the status of brutes. They were viewed as raw materials for making things, as food, and as labor. They were no longer revered. They were viewed as property to be done with as you will. Cruelty didn't matter. You could do whatever you want. And this attitude springs from Genesis chapter 9. In Genesis chapter 9, God tells Adam that man has dominion over the animals. He is their Lord and Master. God also tells Adam later in chapter 9 that the animals will fear him and that he should rule them. This attitude of animals as property, animals as dumb brutes, continued from around the beginning of the Middle Ages, which I'm defining as 600 to 1600, until about the middle of the 18th century. The church decreed that animals had no souls, therefore they were not even really creatures that needed to be considered as far as having feelings, having needs or rights that needed to be met, having any right to a place to live, or not being hurt, or anything like that. And Western culture took that to heart, and animals had a hard time. They were even viewed as weak enough that demons could enter the animal spirits, and they were possessed by the devil. And when that happened, they took the animals to trial. They had two kinds of trial between the 1300s and about the end of the 17th century. They did civil service trials. They did civil trials where the animal was hauled into court. If it had accidentally killed someone or something like that, the animal could be pulled into court and tried for murder and executed. The animal had a prosecuting attorney and a defense attorney, and they all took their roles very seriously. And there were also ecclesiastical courts where animals were tried for things like demon possession and witchcraft. There was some suggestion in some of my research that there was a correlation between the witchcraft trials that were going on at the same time and animal trials, because in the Middle Ages they viewed both animals and women as inferior, weak vessels that demons could enter and possess easily. And that brings us to the end of the Elizabethan era. Sir Francis Bacon comes up with the scientific method, and during the 17th century things begin to change for animals, and that's what we'll talk about next.
Leopold's Thinking Like a Mountain, the story of a man who shoots and kills a she-wolf and her pups, then regrets it later in life, aids in understanding the thin line between dominion and stewardship, and how easy it is to move between them. The speaker says that when he was young, he did not think about the good services that the wolf performed for the environment. He saw only competition for gain. Later, when he is older and has seen what a predator-free environment looks like, and realized that hunting wolves keeps herbivorous prey from stripping the forest, he understands the difference between dominion and stewardship. While Sarah O. Jewett's A White Heron is not part of our reading list, I chose to use it because it highlights the dilemma between stewardship and science, conservation and progress. The little girl in the story meets an ornithologist who is looking for a rare white heron. He is a nice man and she likes him, but when he tells her he is going to kill the heron and add it to his trophy collection, she decides not to tell him where it is. In addition to the girl's dilemma, this story points out the contradictions of science. The ornithologist claims to love birds, especially white herons, but the minute he finds one, he wants to eradicate it as if somehow having a trophy instead of a live bird allows it to exist forever. Barry Lopez's Apologia, the story of a man who stops to remove dead animals who have been hit by cars from the road, is an extreme example of the stewardship theme. Not only does the speaker want to remove dead animals from the road and clean up the environment, he feels guilty about the dead, even though he did not kill them. He even feels guilty for killing the insects that have gotten caught in his grill. The suggestion is that although he is doing his best to be a good steward of animals and his environment, he is failing miserably. If he is a symbol for every man, then humanity as a whole, even when trying very hard, is doing a poor job of stewarding the planet. The three philosophies regarding animals that we have discussed so far are equality or brotherhood between humans and animals, dominion over animals, or stewardship of animals. The Wintu tribe narrative, the willingness of the deer to die, addresses all three major themes in the concept of the deer being willing to die, willing to give itself to the hunter. The fact that the hunter feels obligated to request the deer's life instead of just taking it puts the deer and the hunter on the same footing. They are equals, mutually respecting each other, giving and taking. At the same time, the very act of hunting and killing a deer is domination. The deer never asks the hunter to die for it. The killing only goes one way. However, the hunter's attitude and demeanor mute the most unpleasant aspects of man's dominion. The hunter is humble in his killing. Killing the deer is not a victory for him, but a sacrifice of the animal's life to his survival, and he is grateful for her gift. Stewardship comes into play because the hunter does have to enter into the contract with each deer. He cannot just go into the forest willy-nilly and start killing deer. If the deer allows the hunter to kill it, the hunter must show respect and stewardship of the gift of the deer as a resource, by not wasting any part of the animal. This is one more way that the hunter shows gratitude for the deer's gift. This story speaks to many aspects of the human-animal relationship. It encompasses both the bad and the good parts, respect between man and nature, conservation of the gift that is an animal, and the killing of the animal for survival. Finally, we have the idea that animals are superior or more valuable than humans. Although this sounds like a very modern concept, animals were sometimes considered more valuable than women or slaves in various past eras and cultures. Perhaps the most extreme opinions come from Ingrid Newkirk, the National Director for People for Ethical Treatment of Animals. Ms. Newkirk would have humans eschew all animal contact, experiencing enjoyment at a distance, and eventually living in isolation from them. This point of view suggests that no matter how humans interact with animals, they will never treat them well enough. People will never be good enough or safe enough to associate with animals. While for most people this opinion goes too far, it is as valid as any other.
Well, there you have it. We've gone through 10,000 years of human history and looked at how animals and humans have interacted and interrelated. Animals kind of came off on the short end of the stick for most of our time together on the planet. But we're trying to change that. We've had mankind view animals as brothers, as what amounts to slaves, and as creatures that needed to be taken care of, and as superior beings. I guess I am a believer in stewardship of animals most of all. I am not an animal rights activist. I eat meat. I have been known to use leather goods. I have occasionally used a little fur trim on something I've made. Granted, it was old, but still, it did belong to an animal at one point. But I still love animals, and I don't want them to suffer, and I would like for their lives to be as good as an animal's life can be. I would like all my cats to live lives full of cat joys, and my dog to have a life full of dog joys, and so on. So, you've heard my stance. Where do you stand as far as man's relationship to animals?